Now the topic before us is things an interviewer should look for in job candidates. In other words, what are those qualities which the interviewer should seek in the interviewee? First point is how well does the candidate understands the job? The interviewer should make ensure that the candidate understands what the job is. It should be made ensured that the candidate has full knowledge about what is expected from him while he will be selected for the job. If the interviewer selects the right candidate for the job, it will be very beneficial for the company as well as for the employee, because so far as the company is concerned, it the productivity of the employee will increase and he will be in the good books of the employer. On the other hand, if the productivity of the employee is increased, then it will ultimately benefit the business. Next point, knowledge of the job seeker about the company. The interviewer should ask the questions which pertain to the company. If the candidate has learnt about the company and visited the website of the company, he might be having enough knowledge about the company. But if he has not gathered any information about the company and has simply come for the interview, it means that the interview that the candidate is not industrious or laborious, and he may not be the best candidate for the job. Next point is response of the candidate. When the interviewer asks questions to the candidate and the candidate is not in a position to give the answers in quickly or properly, then it means that the candidate is not prepared and he may not be the right candidate for the job. Next point is evaluating the candidate from non-verbal cues. When we communicate with a person, there are two types of communications. One is verbal communication and the other is non-verbal communication. When I am giving this lecture, I am speaking. This is verbal communication. But the actions, body language, face impression, all these are non-verbal cues. When a candidate appears before the interview, his body actions, his facial expression, all communicate a lot. If a candidate who is before the interviewer sits straight and maintains eye contact with the interviewer, it means that the candidate is confident. But if the candidate does not maintain eye contact with the interviewer, it means that the candidate is nervous or he lacks interest. If the candidate taps the feet or bites his nails, it also means that the candidate is nervous or feeling stressful. It can create a negative impression on the interviewer. Next point is, can the candidate narrate achievements? If you can, as a interviewer, you can ask the candidate whether he can tell something about his achievements during his previous job. If he is in a position to tell something about his achievements during his previous job, then he may be the candidate which may be the selected for the job. Next point is the candidate prepared? It means that if a person has dressed properly and arrived for the interview well in time and answers all the questions properly confidently and has brought all the copies of the relevant documents such as qualifications, his a certificate regarding his previous job and other papers as may have been demanded by you while calling for interview, then it means that the candidate is prepared. If the candidate is not prepared and has not come fully prepared, then it means that he lacks interest in the job or is not laborious or industrious. Then he should not be selected for the job. Next point, whether the candidate has skills which are required for the job. Suppose we want a person which is to do the job of accounts and he has come before us. If a person has a work experience, that is if he has previously worked in an organization relating to the accounts job, then he may be selected for the job. You may also ask as an interviewer whether he has handled any projects which are relevant to the job. This will help you to get a better understanding of his skills as well as experience. You can also ask the candidate whether he can give the names of those persons who can testify about his skills as well as experience. Next point is, does the candidate has the knowledge about his strengths as well as weaknesses? As a human being, every human being has its own set of strengths and weaknesses. But if a person says that I do not have any weakness, then it means that he is not fully aware of himself. Then if on the other hand, if a person can tell you that he has these strengths and these are his weaknesses and he is taking steps to improve his weaknesses, then he is fully aware of his strengths and weaknesses. But if a person says that I am having only strengths and no weaknesses, then he is not fully aware of his strengths and weaknesses and is not the right candidate to be selected for the job. Next point, the candidate who is aware of his strengths and weaknesses, he can give the examples of times when he has demonstrated his strengths. He can also tell you about his weaknesses and he will also in a position to explain how he is working to improve his weaknesses. If there is a candidate and you pinpoint any deficiency in his attitude or personality or his way of speaking and he responds in a very negative manner, then it means that he is not open to constructive criticism. So he may not be the best candidate for the job. A person who is always ready to listen to the constructive criticism is the best. The candidate, though that candidate is best if he is comfortable with discussing his, when we discuss with him his weaknesses or about his deficiencies. Overall, a candidate who is aware of his strengths as well as his weaknesses may prove to be an asset to the organization, because if he is aware of his weaknesses, he will take steps to improve himself as well as he can use his strengths to increase the productivity of the organization. Next point is, does the candidate has career goals? As an interviewer, you can ask the candidate what are his future career plans. If the job in question supports his goals, he may be interested in staying with the company for long term. Next point, whether the candidate has leadership abilities. If the interviewer, if the candidate is to be selected for the job where he has to take the role of a leadership, that is, if the person is to be selected for the post of, say, the manager, where he will have to manage many employees, he will naturally work as a leader. The following points may indicate whether the candidate has the leadership abilities. If the person, whether the person has strong communication abilities, whether he has the ability to motivate and inspire others, whether he has strategic thinking, that is, if he can see the big picture and make plans accordingly to achieve that, whether he is emotionally intelligent, whether he can manage his own emotions as well as he can manage the emotions of others, and whether the candidate has strong decision making skills. Next point is whether the candidate is confident in himself or herself. A confident candidate is that who is very confident in giving his replies. He gives his replies with conviction. He is very comfortable in while giving his answers regarding his experiences or other questions. He speaks confidently about his qualifications, about his achievements, and he is able to engage with the interviewer. Engage means he is able to communicate properly with the interviewer. He has a general attitude which is positive in nature. Next, you can ask some questions about the problem solving skills. The questions may relate to whether you have faced any problem regarding your subordinate employees in the past. If yes, can you give some example? Then you can ask the candidate, if there are multiple problems before you as a manager, how you can prioritize those problems and how much efforts you will, and how much effort you will give to the most priority or problem. Can you give also an example of a problem when you have to give collab when you have to give collaborate with others to solve the problems? If there may be also the circumstances when the candidate may not have been able to solve a problem, you can ask the question whether there was any situation where you were not in a position to solve the problem, and you may ask him why he was not able to solve that problem. When you ask such like questions regarding the problems faced by him in the past, during his previous jobs, it will naturally give you an insight regarding the problem solving skills of the candidate. Next point, what are the expectations for the job? Ask the candidate directly what are his expectations from the job regarding the salary and other benefits such as working hours. What are the key factors he considers when evaluating a job opportunity? You can also ask what does she hope to gain from the job for which he has applied. When you are asking questions to the candidate, you should listen carefully to all the responses or replies given by the candidate. If you are not clear about any reply given by the candidate, you can ask for further clarification from the candidate so that you can have a deep insight regarding the thinking of the and the problem solving skills of the candidate. It is very important that we should be transparent with the candidate regarding the salary as well as the working hours, so that there is no misunderstanding later on. Then there is another point which relates to the appearance of the candidate. When the candidate comes for the interview, you should see whether he has dressed himself properly, whether the clothing he has worn is clean and wrinkleless, whether his shoes are clean or not, whether he is having clean hands, whether the hairs are clean, whether the clothes which he have worn are professional and job appropriate. A candidate's hygiene and how he dresses for the interview may be a good indicator of how he will arrive for the job when he is selected for the job. Next point, whether the candidate is dependable. From the resume as well as the job application, the interviewer can find out at that in the past how many jobs the particular candidate has left, or how many jobs he was working in the past. If the candidate has left the jobs, say after every 15 or days or 1 month, it means that he is not satisfied with his jobs, or he may not work also with this company for a long time. But if the person is very speaking negatively about the previous employees, it also means that he has negative thinking. But if a person has worked in a particular organization in the past for a quite long time, it means that the person is not only having job knowledge, but was also but also is a dependable person and may be selected for the job. You can also ask the candidate about his colleagues or his officers in the previous organization who can confirm his dependability. Next point is motivators. There are certain persons for whom the motivation is promotion or money. There are certain other persons for whom the motivation is that they want to make an impression on the others that they are the good persons and they only want to improve their skills. By understanding what motivates the candidate, you can gain an insight into whether they will be a good candidate to be selected for the job, because these are the motivators who motivate the candidate to do the job. Next, asking questions from resume. Candidates sometimes ask for help to create their resume. They are not aware what has been written by the other person in their resume. So when you ask something about from the resume from the candidate, he may not be fully aware what has been written by his friend in his resume. So you may ask one or two things from his resume to ensure that everything written in the resume is written by him and in actually pertains to him. Because if the other person has written a resume, he may write certain wrong things. For example, if there is written in the resume that he has done a job with a particular organization, you can ask him the question, where you were working in the past, for how long you worked there. If a person has mentioned in his resume that he has attended a training at a particular organization during the specified period, you can also ask the question regarding the same. You can also ask how you handled specific responsibility at your previous job. Next point is adaptability and flexibility. If the candidate who is before you is adaptable and flexible to handle the unexpected situations, he is the best candidate to be selected for the job. You can, to confirm whether he is adaptable and flexible, you can ask the questions like, have you ever had to work in an unfamiliar or new environment? If yes, how you adapted to the new situation? Next, you can also ask to the candidate whether there was any occasion in the past where he had to work in a very challenging with a challenging officer who was supervising him. If yes, how did you handle that situation? You can also ask, have you ever had to take on a task that was outside your job description? It means that suppose a person was doing the accounts job and he was also asked to handle the job of salesman during a quite brief period. You can ask whether such type of situation has occurred with you in the past in your previous job. If yes, how you handled it, and if there were any setbacks in the past in your work, how you handled it. Give me an example. When you ask these types of questions to the candidate, then the answers from the candidate will give you an insight into the candidate's ability to adapt to the changing circumstances and take on new responsibilities. When the candidate gives the reply to some questions, then you should ask follow-up questions so that you can have a deep understanding about the knowledge, skills, and the experience of the candidate. Next point is whether the candidate is a self-starter. Who is self-starter? A self-starter candidate is someone who is motivated and takes initiative in his work. He does not need constant supervision by any other person. He is in a position to work independently. Assessing whether a candidate is self-starter is important for the interviewer, as it can indicate how proactive he will be in taking on tasks and responsibilities without being told. It means that if the person is self-starter and he has been selected for the job in the organization, then he may at his own level may come forward to do the job. Next, you can also ask certain questions to the candidate to determine whether the candidate is a self-starter. You can ask the question, can you tell me about a time when you took the initiative to solve a problem at work without being asked? You can also ask the question, can you give me an example of a project you completed without being closely supervised? How did you manage your time and ensure you met the goals and deadlines? In the same way, you can also ask, can you give me an example of a time when you went above and beyond what was expected of you in your role? Thus, if a person who is a self-starter is selected for the job, it will ensure that the person will come forward of his own to do not only his job but will always be ready to help others. In this way, the productivity of the organization will naturally increase. Next point is whether the candidate has helpful ideas. You can ask the candidate for examples of idea which he gave to the previous employer to improve his business. You can also ask the candidate whether he has any idea in his mind how the sales or the improvement in the working of this organization where he has applied for can be improved. If a candidate has a track record which shows that he has good achievements to his credit in the past, is likely to have helpful ideas and may prove to be an asset for the organization. Next point is whether the candidate is respectful. When a person has come to the office for the interview, you may find out whether his behavior with the other candidates as well as with the office staff members is proper or not. If his behavior was respectful, then he may be the best candidate selected for the job. A candidate who shows empathy for others and who is able to see things from the other's perspectives is likely to be respectful of others. If a person is respectful, it contributes to a positive and productive workplace environment. By evaluating the candidates on these criteria, interviewers can ensure that they are selecting the best candidate for the job who will not only perform his job satisfactorily but will also contribute positively to the company culture and environment. Thanks for watching. If you like our course, please spare some time to give a star rating to our course.